been playing with the technique over the past few days of applying acrylic paint to cardstock in little blobs and swiping them up with a piece of cardboard that's just trimmed to the size you want. And I found it really interesting, and I've really enjoyed doing it. I've been using up a few almost empty tubes of acrylic paint and combining different colours, some of which turn to mud, but I'll talk about that later. I'm not brilliant with colour combinations. I'm trying to work on that skill or knowledge base. But in the meantime, I've produced a few cards, and I'll just go through how I go about it. It's quite quick and easy. I saw several videos, but the one that appealed to me was from Teela Cunningham, who called her video 3 Simple Tricks for Unique Acrylic Backgrounds or Acrylic Textures, and I'll put that link below so you can check out her video. All we need is a piece of cardstock, and you know, it's amazing. Just go through your scrap bin and you can use anything as long as it's got a little bit of weight, or even if it hasn't, once it's dry you can adhere it to another surface and make it strong enough to use, or apply it as I did to mats on the cards to make it a bit more sturdy. But this is just a piece of recycled card, and I thought I'll just show you quickly how I'll go about it. You need a piece of this is just a piece of corrugated board from the end of a small box, so I'll just cut the flap off and used a portion of that, and depending on the width of the piece that you cut will be the width of the pieces of texture that you get on your finished product. And today I'm just going to use that one. I want a broader one. I want a more masculine look for this card. Just before I start that, I'll take you through some of the cards that I've already made. The blue one I really like, and I'm not sure, you probably can catch the gleam. I found the best, well, the effect that I like best was when I'd use some glossy paints or metallics, but particularly the gloss acrylics came up beautifully, and I really like that. And it really doesn't need any other embellishments, although you could of course embellish if you wanted to. The same with this pinky one, and you might note that in a couple of places there's some white showing through, but I think that's quite nice. I think it just highlights the colour. You don't need to go back and try and get rid of those. And this one, which I really like, it reminds me a lot of Monet's water reflections in his water lily paintings and garden paintings. I just like that sort of water reflection effect. Sometimes you can make a complete muddy mess, and I'll show you that in the video. I've already covered it and gessoed over it, but I don't like this one at all. And this was with 4 colours. It was red, orange, yellow and gold. And while I don't like it, I think it could be salvaged. I could trim it down just a fraction and perhaps just embellish it with something incredibly plain like this, cut out from my Scan and Cut, something like that. You can make it quite stylish and effective and dynamic. With these ones, of course, you can add embellishments. I went through my embellishment box, and for example, something like that could be added to the front of the card if you like to embellish your cards. I don't particularly. I just like the effect of the colour and the texture, and I like things fairly plain. But what did I think? This little white flower might look nice on that, with perhaps a bright button that might just perk it up and take it to another dimension, alter the look of the card. Depends what you're going to use them for. I like to leave mine unembellished until I am about to distribute them. Now this card I show you on the video, it's one that I muddied up the background. I used quite a large piece of cardboard, not as large as this, but quite large, to make the texture in the paint. And a bit like this one, I used too many colours. I think I added green, and all it did was turn it to mud. I had lots of brown looking bits that I didn't like. So I black gessoed it and added some gold finish to it, and I've turned it into quite a plain masculine card. But even that one I've got in my little, it's not finished, but there's a goldy, what are they, Crazy Bird from Tim Holtz, you know, something like that could be added to it, some sort of an embellishment to finish it off if it was too plain for the purpose or for the person that you're giving it to. Here's another one that I've gessoed over and coated with silver sheen, and again that will make quite a reasonable card, more masculine looking card or background for something else. Make great tags too, you could use them as tags for gifts. So having cut the piece of card to the size you want, maybe that is just a little wide, I'll cut it down a little bit. There's no signs to it, it's just playtime, it's messy, it's really quite nice. What I find I do is put far too much paint on, so I'll try and limit that this time. And I'm just going to use a palette of Payne's Grey, black and silver, and I'll just see how that goes, because I've got a few chaps' birthdays coming up, and these colours will make a nice background, you know, for adding more colour or embellishments to, or just leaving as they are. And a lot of these are just leftover pieces, as I said, of, whoops, way too much. But hey, doesn't matter, we're just going to whip right in and see what we get. And even, as I said, if it's a bit of a disaster, we can gesso over it and turn it into something completely different, which is a nice way of keeping our options open. I'm a bit enamoured of Payne's Grey at the moment. I'm not sure how it'll look on this, but we'll just see. So you just take the end of the card the cardboard piece, and use it to flick and wipe and distribute, trying not to go too far over what you've already done. Because that's what turns it to mud, and this is going to be pretty dark and gloomy anyway because of all the black and dark Payne's Grey that I've added. I probably should have included a little more of the silver, but I just wanted to see what the effect would be. And you can finish off the edges as much or as little as you want. I might just go around and darken up those edges, seeing as I've got the paint on my little, cover that. There we go. A little bit left over there, but that's okay. That can go straight in the bin. I'm not going to want that again. I'll just slip that onto a piece of scrap paper and put it aside to dry. And the drying time is crucial. You really need to leave these overnight at least. Even though it's quite warm here at the moment, I'm having to leave them overnight so that all of those blobs and globs of paint dry thoroughly. If you tried to work on it before they were fully set, they would just smear and make a mess. So that's it, that's how simple it is. Now I've put that aside. I'll just clean up my board and I'll get on with the rest of it and show you what else I've done. I think the things to remember are just to choose your colour palette and limit it to 2 or 3 colours, and just have fun, just have play. It's quite therapeutic. I'll clean this up and I'll get back to you shortly. Here I am just finishing off the blue, teal and yellow version. I put that on some paper. I really like that colour combination. And this is the pinky raspberry mauvey version. These paints were a little bit softer, they weren't as dimensional when they dried, but it was a pretty effect. Again, I used far too much, splashing it about with gay abandon there. I'm just flicking it on. I'm never quite sure where to start, whether to start in the centre and work out or start in the bottom corner and work up. I don't think it matters particularly. I think wherever you decide to start is good. I think the centre is probably a pretty good place to start. And these I went to the edge pretty much on all of them, but I also trimmed the edges a little when I was making the cards. I just trimmed them out a little to make sure they were even. Now this is the one, you can see I made a complete and utter mess of this. There's blue, green, orange, yellow and silver and mostly mud. So this is the one I coated first with the black gesso to get rid of the evidence. It doesn't take long for the gesso to dry, so I didn't have to wait too long to start working on this one. Not nearly as long as you need to wait for the background acrylic paint to dry. I just used the gold sheen at first and a nice dry bristly brush with no water, and I really just had an idea that I wanted to just pick up the highest areas of the texture, but this sheen acrylic is very subtle. It was too subtle, it wasn't oomphy enough, and in the end I just used up all that I had tipped out and got out the Inca Gold in the finish. You can see there it's very subtle, it really doesn't pack much of a punch at all. So I got out the Inca Gold, which is a bright yellowy gold as you can see, and used the same little palette and brush and just got far more adventurous with the medium and brushed it on, because I found it was picking up the brush texture as well as the acrylic paint texture, and I thought it looks quite specky like that. Gave it a bit of a polish up to bring up the shine. I cut a mat in gold mirror card and adhered that onto my black card base, and I went around the edges of both the mirror card and the textured piece simply because both of them had white edges. So I just used my black brush marker and went round them and blackened the edges so that there was no white showing. Used the same Hellmark craft glue. It sticks well. Never quite sure with mirror card just how well the adhesive's going to work. I cut out a happy with a little die, a little paper tray ink die, and I also cut the die shape out of a piece of black fun foam. As you can see there, I'm just adding the foam glue to it, Hellmark foam glue. You can't really see the die cut, but it's there. I've just outlined it with the dots, and now I'm adhering the foiled piece over the top and letting that dry. I ended up putting 2 pieces of foil because I, as always happens with me, I got a bit of glue on the first layer, so I simply covered it with a second layer. Here I've used some Versamark ink to stamp out the word birthday, and now I'm embossing it with a Wow fine gold embossing powder. I've cut that out and removed the adhered happy from the foam, putting the little birthday sentiment onto, or adding some slightly dimensional foam to the back of that, just so that both pieces have got some dimension. Adding the Helmar glue to the back of that foam because I really want that to stick to the bumpy surface. Putting a bit of weight on that while it dries, and also adding some adhesive to the little sentiment panel as well, because I really do want these to stick, and as it's so bumpy, it needs all the help it can get. And that's about it. It's a really fun technique. I have enjoyed playing with that. I've got a nice lot of cards, as you can see. I love the effect of it, even the quite plain look of it. And that's one I'll certainly use again. I think make great tags. I haven't made any tags yet. There you go, that's the one we just made. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon. Bye now.